It now looks like Republicans may have seriously miscalculated with their latest Epstein-related political maneuver. The strategy seemed pretty clear: shift attention away from Donald Trump by dragging Bill and Hillary Clinton back into the spotlight. The assumption was that just invoking the Clintons would dominate headlines and muddy the waters. But that plan didn't quite land the way they expected. Instead of resisting, the Clintons agreed to cooperate. They showed up, prepared to testify, only to discover that Republicans intended to keep the deposition completely private. That's when Hillary Clinton publicly pushed back, making it clear she wasn't going to play along quietly. She explained that for 6 months, her team had worked with Republicans on the House Oversight Committee in what she described as good faith. They provided sworn testimony and answered questions under oath. According to Clinton, none of that mattered. She accused Republicans of ignoring the facts, constantly shifting the goalposts, and turning what was supposed to be accountability into little more than a political distraction. Then she drew a line. She called on Oversight Committee Chair James Comer directly, saying it was time to stop playing games. If Republicans truly believed in transparency, she argued, there was only one real way to prove it: hold a public hearing. Cameras on, everything out in the open, no closed doors, no selective leaks. And she made it clear, if that's what they want, she's ready to show up. In other words, Hillary Clinton didn't dodge the confrontation. She challenged it openly, effectively calling their bluff. And that's where the dynamic suddenly shifted, because the next move was no longer in her hands.
She wants to tell you how to do your job. You're saying no.
No, look, she has moved the goalposts millions of times throughout this entire process, then fires out an email attacking me today, accusing me of moving the goalpost, and she's the one who's tried to move the goalpost again. She agreed to a standard deposition. The deposition will be made public. So what she's asking for is already going to happen. The deposition will be videoed. You'll have the audio and a transcript. Everyone in America will have access to it. Every deposition I've ever done in the 3 years I've been chairman of the House Oversight Committee, we have released the transcript and the video and the audio. So what she's asking for is already going to happen. But what she really wants, Sean, is a committee hearing. And everyone that's ever watched a committee hearing in Congress, including the one in the House this week with the Treasury Secretary, knows that committee hearings are more for entertainment than substance. The deposition is for substance. This is a serious investigation. The purpose of the investigation is to get justice for the victims and to figure out why the government failed the victims and who the bad guys were and if they can be held accountable. So this is about the victims. This isn't about the Clintons. The Clintons are trying to play the victim cards. The victims of Epstein are the victims, not the Clintons.
For anyone keeping track, Donald Trump's name shows up repeatedly in the Epstein files, an extraordinary number of times, by some counts well into the thousands. That alone creates a massive political liability. And when the spotlight starts burning that bright, the priority becomes simple: redirect it somewhere else. So instead of treating the Epstein revelations as his problem, Trump flips the script. Suddenly, in his telling, this isn't about him at all. It's not a Trump issue, it's a Democratic one. The narrative shifts almost overnight, with Democrats cast as the real focus, the real scandal, and the real target. It's a familiar playbook: change the subject, reframe the controversy, and push the heat onto the other side before it can fully settle in.
You know, when Epstein was alive, nobody cared about him. When he's dead, they care about him. But it's really a Democrat problem. It's not a Republican, it's a Democrat problem.
So if you're looking at this from a strategic standpoint, the list of Democratic targets is pretty short. The obvious choice is the Clintons. The plan is simple: make a public show of demanding their testimony, fully expecting them to refuse. That way, Republicans can frame the entire story around secrecy, what the Clintons are hiding, what they don't want the public to see. Except there's one problem. The Clintons didn't refuse. They agreed to testify. That's where things start to unravel. Once the Clintons said yes, especially to testifying in public, the narrative Republicans were counting on began to collapse. A public hearing would shine a spotlight not just on the witnesses, but on the broader context Republicans would rather avoid, particularly the unanswered questions surrounding Trump. And so suddenly, Oversight Chair James Comer appears to be scrambling to reverse course. Instead of a public hearing, Comer now insists on a closed-door deposition. And the reason isn't subtle. A private deposition allows Republicans to control the messaging once it's over. They can walk out, talk to the press, selectively describe what happened, and confidently rely on Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, and the rest of the right-wing media ecosystem to amplify whatever version of events the GOP wants pushed. That ecosystem doesn't question the spin. It absorbs it. This playbook is familiar. It's not Republicans' first time using it, and it's certainly not Hillary Clinton's first time dealing with it either. Now, to be clear, the Clintons should testify. They should provide every bit of information they have. And if they've done something illegal or corrupt involving Jeffrey Epstein, they should be held fully accountable. Party affiliation shouldn't matter. Democrat, Republican, or independent, if you were involved in wrongdoing, you should face consequences. Full stop. But let's be honest about what's happening here. Accountability is not the real motivation. The Clintons are being used as political decoys, a way to scatter attention and redirect it away from Trump. That's why Comer's claim that he wants to avoid a spectacle and pursue justice for the victims doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Because the same Republicans now preaching seriousness did nothing while Trump delayed the release of the Epstein files for nearly a year. Even today, millions of documents, roughly 3 million, remain unreleased with no clear plan for disclosure. And on that point, there's been silence. No outrage, no urgency. The Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, has already stated there will be no prosecutions, no identified co-conspirators, and there are no oversight hearings scheduled to challenge that conclusion. Meanwhile, Trump's name appears in the Epstein files repeatedly, by far more than most others. Yet that fact barely registers in Republican talking points. And that's what makes the next moment especially revealing. When James Comer himself was asked what would happen if Trump were called to testify.
President Trump's name is mentioned more than 1,000 times in these documents. Why not try to get more information from him? Try to get him to testify.
Well, I've noticed that every time you all do a gaggle like this with President Trump, somebody asks him about Epstein. So he's been answering questions about Epstein.
Not under oath.
But, well, has Bill Clinton ever answered any questions on Epstein or Hillary Clinton? So this is going to be a new opportunity, and we'll go from there.
But if this is truly a serious investigation, if the stated goal really is justice for the victims, then a basic question immediately comes up. Why isn't Trump being treated the same way? His name appears in the Epstein files far more frequently than the Clintons. So why isn't he being called in, questioned under oath, or even publicly pressured to testify? And this isn't some hypothetical. James Comer has been directly asked about Trump's role and whether Trump should testify. The question has been put right in front of him. Yet, instead of a clear, principled answer consistent with this supposed pursuit of justice, what we get is deflection, evasion, a change of subject. Because when Trump himself is asked about Epstein, this is exactly how he responds, by brushing it off, minimizing it, or reframing the entire issue so that it never actually lands on him. No urgency, no accountability, just vague dismissals and convenient distance. And somehow that's accepted. That's treated as sufficient. So again, the contradiction is impossible to ignore. If the investigation were truly about facts, transparency, and justice for victims, the standard would apply evenly. But it doesn't. And that inconsistency tells you far more about what this process is really designed to do than any press release or talking point ever could.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
And apparently, that's all James Comer needed to call it a day. Enough for him, the self-proclaimed champion of serious investigation. But really, think about it. Can that possibly be enough? Surely there must be a more thorough, more satisfactory explanation. Surely the American public deserves more than half answers, selective scrutiny, and political maneuvering disguised as oversight. Yet here we are, watching a supposed investigation pick and choose its targets, while the bigger questions, the ones that actually matter, go unanswered.
Is there something incriminating in the file, sir? Quiet. What did Jeffrey Epstein mean in his emails when he said you knew about the girls?
I know nothing about that. They would have announced that a long time ago. It's really, what did he mean when he spent all the time with Bill Clinton, with the president of Harvard, you know, that is Summers, Larry Summers, whatever his name is, and all of the other people that he spent time with. Jeffrey Epstein and I had a very bad relationship for many years. But he also saw a strike because I was president. So he dictated a couple of memos to himself, give me a break. You got to find out, what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan shares.
Sir,
Yeah,
is there
Jennifer, go
something
ahead, go ahead.
incriminating in the file, sir?
Nothing screams transparency quite like lashing out at a reporter for simply doing her job. In this case, a female journalist asked a straightforward question about Epstein, and the response, she was called a pig. Charming. Clearly, that's the kind of open book honesty James Comer seems eager to extract from Trump. But let's set that aside for a moment and try again, because if real answers are ever going to come, a little patience and persistence might be required.
A lot of women who are survivors of Epstein's are unhappy with those redactions that came out. Some of them, entire witness interviews are totally blacked out. Do you think that they should be more transparent?
The fact that they thought they released too much. You know, I heard that, and you tell me something else. No, I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Really, you know, now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
What would you say to people
like
who feel like they haven't gotten
healthcare,
justice, Mr. President?
something that people care about. Yeah, what did you say? Go ahead.
What would you say to
are
the
so
survivors
bad.
who feel like they haven't gotten
You are the
justice?
worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face. You know why? You know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth. And you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you.
The very satisfactory answer from Trump that James Comer apparently finds so convincing. I guess that explains why a deposition for Trump wouldn't be necessary. After all, he's already shown such remarkable transparency. Right, James? But let's be honest, if any of this didn't already make it crystal clear, the pattern speaks for itself. This has never truly been about the survivors or delivering justice. From the start, it's been about shielding Trump from scrutiny, deflecting attention, and controlling the narrative. And don't just take my word for it. Listen to the words of a survivor herself, who knows firsthand what this is really about.
You hear the president say he thinks the country wants to move on from the Epstein files. Is that how you feel?
Well, first, let me say, Caitlin, thank you so much for having me back. And I know I don't just speak for myself when I say I really appreciate how persistent you were in questioning this administration about their failure with this release. I don't think it's something to smile about, and I thought you handled it very appropriately. I'm not surprised that Trump is ready to move on and that this DOJ is ready to move on, but we are certainly not, especially after we saw how poorly this last release of documents was handled.
So if James Comer really wants to deliver justice for the survivors, here's a radical idea. Actually listen to the survivors themselves. Because right now, it's painfully clear that this isn't about them. What he's protecting is the man Epstein called his best friend for over a decade. And honestly, the only thing worse than defending the pedophiles and their enablers is gaslighting the survivors, making them think they're being helped when they're not. In doing so, the GOP has managed to turn their own signature issue into a display of moral bankruptcy. The silver lining? Voters won't forget. Every day they spend dodging responsibility, deflecting blame, and trying to pivot the story onto Democrats only deepens the spotlight on their own culpability. The more they play these games, the more obvious it becomes who's really shielding power and who's truly accountable.